We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we explore the minds of artists, uncover the creative processes behind their songs, and dive into the world of music that moves us. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and thank you for joining us. Our guest on the podcast today is the much beloved singer and songwriter, Gordi. The musical project of Sophie Payton, Gordi has been crafting beautifully melancholic folktronic music for years now, captivating listeners with her two previous albums, Reservoir and Our Two Skins. She's also collaborated with a wide range of artists, including Josh Pike, Bon Iver, Troye Sivan and Alex Lahey, showcasing her versatility and talent across genres. Today she returns with a brand new EP titled Lunch at Dune, featuring the stunning title track with Irish artist Soak. In today's episode, we're thrilled to welcome Gordi to the podcast to discuss Lunch at Dune and how the concept of perspectives influenced this track. We chat about her collaboration with Soak and dive into what Gordi looks for when choosing a potential collaborator. We also talk about her upcoming fan shows across the US and Europe and get a hint at whether we can expect even more new music from her in 2025. We want to say a huge thank you to Juliet for her help with today's episode and remind everyone that Lunch at Dune is out right now. You can find links in the show notes to stream the EP and grab tickets to see Gordi on tour. And while you're there, don't forget to follow us on our socials to stay up to date with all of our latest guests and episodes. And with that, let's get into it. Here is our conversation with Gordi. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Gordi. Hello there. How's it going?
Hello. Look, it's going okay. I am stuck in airport security with an airport-wide technology blackout, but otherwise things are going pretty well.
I have to hand it to Sophie in terms of dedication to a podcast recording. Being in an airport during a technology blackout is probably like pretty high up there. So I very much appreciate you coming to chat to us about some new music today and songwriting. So yeah, thank you very much.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. There is a brand new EP out from yourself. Today, when people are listening to this chat, it is called Lunch at Dune. Firstly, congratulations on this collection of new music. How are you feeling with new songs coming out?
Honestly, I feel just so happy to be releasing music. You know, I've had a bit of a spell of not doing it. Like my last record came out in 2020. I put out a few things in between, but yeah, this sort of feels like the beginning of the next chapter. And it's, you know, having that sort of time away from doing it has just made me really grateful for the process of, you know, getting something to the finish line and releasing it so that, you know, it's no longer mine. It belongs to everyone else, which is a really nice feeling.
I can only imagine, yeah, what that must be like after a bit of a, I don't want to say necessarily a hiatus, but I know that that you've got other things going on as well as being a musician, I believe. And if people were unaware, you've got, I don't want to say it's a side project because I feel like it's a pretty big deal that you're also a doctor as a career. How does it stack up in terms of I want to say like the anticipation of releasing new music or the nervousness? Is that the same as, actually, let me rephrase it. Is that almost gone because of your other work that doesn't play into this?
Yeah, look, it's interesting that, perspective is a big like theme on this EP and in this song. And one of the things that gives me perspective is my work in medicine. And I mean, look, it definitely doesn't take away me feeling nervous and feeling excited and having that sense of anticipation, but it does put things in perspective. You know, if I'm freaking out that some social media post didn't go out on time or whatever it is, then I can kind of, you know, take a little step back and be like, you know, there are some real problems out there in the world and this isn't one of them. So yeah, the medical work like is, I'm doing less, you know, than I was previously. Like I'm just kind of doing enough 4 weeks a year to maintain my license. So that it's, you know, I'm not shutting the door completely, but music is pretty much taking up all of my time these days.
Well, look, that is very exciting to hear. And I know that there's a lot of people very, very excited that you have come back with new music. As I mentioned, the EP Lunch at Dune, it is out today. And the title track features Irish songwriter Soak with this kind of gorgeous duet between the two of you. How did that kind of come about? Were you friendly with Bridie beforehand?
So we'd never actually met in person, but we had a lot of mutual friends, and I had followed Soak's career for a long time. Like, I went and saw them play in 2014, I think, in Sydney in a church when they'd they were a total baby. They were a teenager, and they'd written Sea Creatures and won the Mercury Prize, and it was just such an extraordinary person and writer. And yeah, this song, I kind of knew I wanted another vocal on it, and I just couldn't get the idea of Soak out of my head. So yeah, I just hit them up and was like, the ultimate, no worries if not, but would you, be interested in singing on this track? And they fortunately said yeah. So I sent it over to them, and they said they were driving through the Portuguese countryside listening to it, and that they really, connected with it. And so they kind of sang the verses, sent the files back to me, and I kind of meshed it all together, and I think it's a really beautiful outcome.
I would 100% agree with that. It is a gorgeous track. We are primarily a songwriting podcast. I was wondering whether you might be able to talk us through the inspiration behind the track, or where the idea of it kind of came from.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I will start with the context. So it was February of 2020. I was in London in an Airbnb, and I was over there because I was doing press for my second record, and it was February 2020. So the world was just sort of slowly rapidly shutting down. And with every day, the news was getting more and more intense, and the US was closing its borders and stuff. And I was, having a conversation with someone, and they were sort of, going through a lot of things that were bothering them, a lot of things that were on their mind, a lot of things that were bringing them down. And I just this contrast of sort of the minutia of life versus this enormous global event that suddenly nothing mattered. We were just shown in an instant that the whole world could shut down, and all our plans that were so important to us just meant nothing. And so it kind of made me think, well, what does matter? And that's kind of the origin of the song, and that sort of line, everything is fleeting except you and I. It's those kind of, those core relationships in your life that really that's what it all kind of boils down to. So I sort of started just writing some lines in a diary. And then the next day I'd kind of booked myself into this writing room in Camden, and I got in there and basically wrote the entire song that day, and recorded a lot of the vocals and guitar parts that still are in the track at this stage. And kind of I sort of refined it after that, but basically all the kind of bones were there after that initial day.
I absolutely love that. I'm super interested, I guess, in the fact of, I know that you said that for a lot of the new music that's coming out from yourself soon, it is about perspective. It is about that kind of, I guess, having a look at the same situation from different points of view and what it may be. For you as a songwriter, and in the world that we do currently live in, we are talking only pulling the curtain back, I guess, a little bit a week before the EP is coming out. So obviously there's a lot going on in the world at the moment, both positive and negative. How do you write about things like that and still maintain an element of positivity or of hope, I guess?
Yeah, it's really challenging, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes the song is just fucking depressing. But I think I also sort of, I think with the way the world is, it's hard not to kind of write about these big global events. But then I do get a little intimidated in that process every time I am sort of confronting that as a theme, because sometimes I think who am I to write about this? You know, who am I to like have a voice on this topic? And so I think like to combat that, I always kind of, you know, just bring it back to, well, I can only write in my own voice. I can only write from my own experience within this, you know, global situation. And so that's kind of what I did with Lunch at Dune. I was like, you know, while the whole world felt like it was literally burning down, I sort of zoomed back in on my own life and the life of, you know, those people closest to me. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people do is, you know, and that the pandemic was a great example when sort of all these like normal constructs just sort of fell away. Everyone just sort of turned inward and, you know, in a very literal way, often we were only allowed to see 5 people, you know, from our social circles or whatever it was. So, and yeah, I think like that's sort of taking like the personal experience within that kind of global context is probably how I approach it.
I absolutely love that. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. As mentioned, there is a duet partner with you on this track, but you're no kind of stranger to collaborations. I know that across your career, there's been, I believe you've worked with artists like Josh Pike, Alex Lahey, who else did we have? Troye Sivan, K. For yourself, Sophie, what do you look for in a collaborator? Like, I guess, what kind of qualities or what is it that attracts you to a certain person to be able to want to work with them?
Yeah, I think it's that, like, it's that diaphragmatic feeling, you know, like that feeling I have even when I'm in my own writing and I'm sort of fishing through lines and chords and stuff, and then you land on something and you think, yeah, this is what I'm trying to do. And it's that kind of, I mean, it's what draws me to songwriting. It's that like indescribable feeling like that you're just being kind of lit up from the inside. But it's sort of all these, you know, emotions like that are, trying to get through like a straw. And that is like, I search for that feeling in other people's music, you know, and in everyone I've collaborated with, I have found that, you know, and I would only kind of go ahead with collaborating with someone if I truly feel that their music has that for me, you know. So like I'm a purely feelings-based person and artist, and that's kind of, you know, what I live and die by and make all my creative decisions, based on.
I absolutely love that. Is there anyone currently on a bit of I want to say like a wish list of sorts in terms of people that you would like to collaborate with?
Great question. You know, the record that's kind of spoken to me most over the past few years is that record that came out by Dijon. Mm-hmm. That I think that was like such a spectacular record and really, got to that place in the gut, which like it just the combination of the way the music feels and the way the vocals are delivered. Like he feels like a really, really special artist to me. So I'll put him on the list.
Look, if we can just simply try and manifest that today, because between his vocals and yourself and your vocals, I think that would be a lovely kind of, what's the word? Whatever it may be, the harmonies between those two kind of vocals, I think will be fantastic. I'm wondering whether you might be able to share with us your introduction to songwriting and where you got started and what got you interested in making music and writing lyrics.
Yeah, totally. It was, basically I turned 12 and I was given an album called The Sound of White by Missy Higgins, who's a, you know, very, very celebrated and well-known Australian artist. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a songwriter who's around my age who wasn't sort of really influenced by her, because I listened to that record and I'd been into music generally my whole life. I grew up like listening to a lot of Carole King and James Taylor and, you know, beautiful songwriters. But this record, it was kind of the first thing that I came to on my own. You know, I felt like the music I'd listened to before was the music of my parents. And this was like, I pressed play and, you know, I just felt like her lyrics were like, it was like a diary entry, and I'd never heard music that sort of unvarnished and personal and vulnerable. And I thought, wow, what an amazing way to explore feelings and thoughts and emotions. And so I started to do that myself. I wrote my first song when I was 13, and I went to boarding school, and so I had a lot of time, just like sitting on my guitar or the piano. And for 6 years, I just like wrote copious amounts of music. I think by the time I'd finished high school, I'd written 100 songs, and it was just what I loved to do. It felt like an addiction, and then it sort of at some point morphed into a career. It's still an addiction, but yeah, it's that Missy album was kind of seminal for me in just learning about lyrics, learning about chord structures. And then, at various points along the way, as I grew older, different artists kind of came into view and turned me down different paths. But yeah, Missy was where it kind of began for me.
That's absolutely lovely. Did I see, I think recently or during her Sound of White tour in Australia, did you get up on stage with her and sing with her?
Not during that tour, but I have had the great privilege of doing it a couple of times. So I sang the Special 2 with her on like a New Year's Eve TV broadcast, and I sang the Sound of White with her at a couple of times, a couple of shows I've played with her. So she's an absolute legend, and it was definitely a real full circle moment to sort of be on stage with her, having started my career listening to her music.
I was going to say, I imagine it's kind of almost a little bit weird in terms of knowing the catalyst of your own career and then almost being on stage with her. So I kind of love that.
Yeah.
For yourself, playing some live shows, I know that you've got a handful of dates in the US and in the UK and Europe across this month in November. What can fans expect from these events?
Yeah, so I, the only other thing I love as much as songwriting is playing shows. And I'm playing, just little intimate shows in like LA, New York, London, Berlin, and Dublin. And it's kind of, just to sort of like start dipping my toe in again, because it has been a little minute since I've released music. And I'm playing them solo, which I do love playing with my band, but there's something special about playing solo because it's all, there's a degree to which it's all a little bit improvised. Like I basically sort of have got my acoustic guitar and I've got like, keys, but I kind of have a few little stations where like I can make some loops and make some sort of like, ambient atmospheric sounds. And so I spend a portion of the set sort of like trying to set up a bit of a sonic world and bed on which to play some of these songs. And there's a song from my second record called Extraordinary Life, which I have started playing. I sort of learned a new way to play it for this tour, which is to sort of go back to its kind of the origins of its songwriting, which was like the whole thing was written on this bed of this kind of vocal hook. And so I've sort of started to kind of recreate that live. It's been a really cool process to kind of fall back in love with the song again. So I think people can expect, hopefully to feel moved, to feel sad, to feel, somewhere that they can, particularly our friends in the US, somewhere they can just come and, sit in their feelings for a little bit. I'm really, really looking forward to these shows. It's going to be special.
That's very, very exciting. We're going to put the links to the US and UK shows, and Europe shows as well, in the podcast show notes for today's episode. How often do you find yourself revisiting? The nice thing about, as you said, being able to play both with a band and solo is working out different arrangements for songs and kind of having different interpretations of them. Is that process enjoyable in terms of when you do switch from one format to the other, working out what's going to work and then being able to play around with maybe what can work differently? I don't want to say better, but differently in a solo capacity.
Totally, yeah. And like last week I played a full band show, and then I played in this sort of solo format. And in one setting I sort of had a grand piano, and the other one I didn't. So I was sort of like learning 3 or 4 different formats of this show for this month, which was mildly stressful. But honestly, I kind of love turning up to a show and there's like a few elements that are like TBD, you know, like it's sort of like we've got the kind of bones of the song that are like going to stay the same, but the kind of, the movement around it is sort of varied and interesting. And, you know, I like to sort of like keep those things like they have their own life, you know, like the live elements have their own life, so they can kind of like keep evolving. And obviously people come to the shows to like just hear the fucking song, but I do kind of like to, you know, have like keep the sort of live version of the song with its own life. But it is always really like one of the things I enjoy most to, you know, try and work out the arrangements of these songs. And particularly when I'm in a solo setting, I do find it like I do think more than ever about the actual writing of the song and think like what are the like most critical elements in the writing of the song that I want to kind of communicate to the audience, because I only have 2 hands and 2 feet with which to play it. So it's always a really fun process.
We've spoken to a number of artists and songwriters as well, just in terms of there is obviously I want to say fan service, like you want to be able to play these songs that people have come to see, but there's also an element of wanting to keep yourself as the artist engaged and interested in the song and entertained to a degree, because if you wanted to play just a simple facsimile of a song, you could almost do that at home.
Yeah, I mean, this is the exact line that I tread constantly, I think. And sometimes I'm like, I feel like maybe I'm pushing it a little bit too far, and people are like, just play the damn song. But yeah, I even said that. I played a show last night and I was like, I do get a little bored of like playing the same thing over and over again. So like, I do like to kind of reimagine it. And, you know, I think like there's no artist or band greater at that exact thing than Bon Iver, you know, that they really like. I've had the privilege of being on tour with them a couple of times, and I'm constantly amazed by how they're able to like reimagine these songs, but still kind of, you know, hold true to it. And the thing they're kind of holding true like the most is the emotion of the song, you know, like while the sort of, the actual, you know, the way they're playing it may change, it's like what they're trying to communicate remains the same.
I would 100% agree with that. I think I've seen Bon Iver maybe 2 or 3 times now, and I don't think I've ever seen the same show the same time with them. It's always, very different, but absolutely brilliant. I do have to ask, and it might be a bit of an obvious question, and totally understand if it gets declined. With a new EP, with new songs, can we maybe expect new music in the new year?
You absolutely can. I have a whole new album ready to go. So I'm very, very, very excited to get that out, and it'll be out next year, unless there's another global pandemic.
Well, look, fingers crossed that we're going to get that album and that there's not a pandemic exactly in that order. Sophie, I very much appreciate you coming onto the podcast today. To wrap things up, we usually ask our guests what they're currently listening to. For yourself, is there anything that's on high rotation at the moment?
You know, I've been listening a lot to an artist who I love and admire, and particularly as a songwriter, is a woman named Anais Mitchell. Mm-hmm. And she put out a self-titled record in 2023, and I rinsed it back then, but I've been coming back to it now. And there's, you know, my favorite song on that record. It's called Brooklyn Bridge. And every time I need something to just like, you know, slow my nervous system down, I put that record on. And it really, you know, when as an indie artist in 2024, things, you know, it's not an easy kind of path to walk. And I look at an artist like that and think like, you know, you just got to stay in the craft and appreciate the work that you do. And it's a really meaningful record to me. So I would highly recommend you check it out.
I absolutely love that. I will be checking that out after we finish chatting today. But Sophie, thank you again so much for coming to chat to us on the podcast. The brand new Gordi EP, Lunch at Dune, is out today. People will be able to stream it in today's show notes and also buy tickets to those shows that we mentioned just before. But thank you again for coming to chat.
Thank you so much for having me and for putting up with the potential background noise of the immigration line.